Hi and welcome. Okay, so today we will look at something new called file upload with Java. I created a video with PHP where I talked about how to upload a file in a somewhat good secure way. Now I'm gonna show you a way to do that with Java, just with a bit more theory and some smaller code examples. So let's get on to it. Of course, you need the actual HTML part, and this is just very simple. I'm not by any means gonna put any focus on the front end. However, I think maybe it's not a bad idea for you to put a bit of work into the front end just to catch the normal itsy bitsy small parts that might come through to the backend. Alright, so keep in mind that front-end in theory and also in practical manners does not contain any sort of security or measures to secure your backend at all. So this is the actual Java part. I hope you can see it, and what it basically is just a class. This is by using an annotation called web servlet, and I gave it a name called upload service, and then we do some multi-part config, basically telling that the file threshold should be 1 megabyte, file size 10 megabyte, and the max request size should be 100 megabytes. So I have a path here called uploads on a D drive. It's just very simple. You should probably alter that to be a bit less like that. So when you're on a production server, you usually have that as either a relative path or a absolute path, depending on how you programmed your upload functionality. It's either one of those. Okay, so then we have a do post, and this is done by using servlets. If you're using Spring or some other framework, this probably doesn't work for you that well. This is just one way with Java to do it, by using servlets. So basically it's just requesting the actual file called getPartFile. If we go back to the HTML, we can see that the type of file is name of file. So depending on the name attribute on that HTML tag called input with the type of file, very important, that name is the name we look for when we request get part. Next thing should be getting the submitted file name. It's very good practice just to look at it. Sometimes if you're getting a malicious file, or someone is trying to upload a malicious file, maybe they named it exploit or something like that. It's a way of catching it. I'm not saying that you should create some sort of blacklisting filter or something, but I guess you can look at it, just for your own kind of personal research, and then save in a file what files originally are named. And if there is if there's an actual case where you get a lot of files named exploit or backdoor or whatever they call it, maybe you could put up a small filter to just remove the small itsy bitsy uploads just by the very first time you get the submitted file name. Then the actual part here is the next part is to do a for loop where we request the get parts, and the get parts is the actual small file bits, the packages, and then we write that to the path into the file name, and basically when that's done, we go back to a JSP file, in this case called upload.jsp. The get method down below is kind of empty, and that's about it. Alright, so I'm going to move a bit forward now. So let's talk about this code a bit more. Obviously, this code is not made secure. It is just the very bare bone of code for you to upload a file using Java servlets. Okay, so how to secure this part? How would you even begin to think about security when looking at this small piece of code? Now, this is a very complex question, and it is also a very complex answer. Sadly, it is not just something you fix like that, and then boom, you have a secure upload function. There are many different things to think about, which I'm also going to discuss at a later point in the slideshow, where I have a small bullet point of interesting points to point out. What I would like to say about this code is that you should probably start off with this if you're a beginner to Java. And please bear in mind that servlets are old, but it is very easy to use servlets and to understand it, and you will learn just as much, I would probably say even more, doing servlets, because it's more bare bone, it's more, it's not a lot of framework instantiations, and then a lot of magic behind the scenes happens. Let's say using Spring or some other framework. It's like very easy, and you don't really know what's going on. Doing it by yourself and constructing your own functionality with the code parts, as you see here, will make you understand how to implement security on the small functions on your application. Of course, one way to start would be to go to the OWASP website and look for the OWASP cheat sheet, and then go look at the upload stuff there. I already have a video where I talk about that on my YouTube channel, and you should definitely go have a look at that. So let's continue a bit. Say like the multipart config annotation that I have in the start, with a bit more explanation here to the different names of parameters, the type, are they optional or required, and a small description. I think it's a really good idea for you to look at it and understand what it does. This is the actual syntax. You can also put in like save location, stuff like that. It is kind of up to you how you do it. I would say the more you have control, in some occasions it can be good, and in other occasions it can be bad. It is kind of up to you when you're dealing with security or implementing security in an application to make the better choice on the implementation strategy. So changing side here, this is a small piece of code that I also created for you guys, so you can check for the mime type of the file. This is of course something you can do whenever the file is uploaded to the server. And now comes the very big question: where do you upload your file at the first time? You know, do you save it directly at the endpoint on your server where it should be located after, so everyone from the web can fetch it? No, of course not. You probably have a temporary folder somewhere on your server where you save that file you just uploaded, and then with some code or whatever you're gonna do, you can run some cron job. You know, it's an automated job you can use by Linux. It's called cron, C-R-O-N. If you don't know it, please go research it. And then you might want to run some various programs, or check the file, check the mime type. You do whatever you can to make sure that this is not some evil file that can in some way compromise your system's security. So what about security, and which kind of things should you think about when dealing with an upload functionality? I even put in it down here a link to the OWASP website, to their community vulnerabilities unrestricted file upload. You should definitely look at that to get a better idea about security when you're dealing with file upload to your application. The very first point is called upload files to a folder without execution rights. Yeah, well, maybe it's a good idea to do not have execution rights, because then the file could in theory be executed on the file system, and that sounds kind of bad. However, what should be executing the file when it is already uploaded in a secure area? That is a good question, and it would kind of require someone to have access to that folder, either from the inside of the server by a already hacked in login credential path. So of course that would be really bad, but we cannot count on the idea of that someone already hacked our server. We should probably think about that our server is not compromised. Give the file an unrestricted file name, and that is a really good idea, because whenever you work with a file upload functionality, You don't want anyone to guess your file name. If you have ever right-clicked on any picture on Facebook or whatever famous social media network, they all give your file a very different and unpredictable file name, which is generated from some hash functionality or whatever they do. Only allow file types necessary for business functionality. And that is very important, because I've seen many websites and systems that allow to upload any type of file and kind of say, oh, that is up to the client to obey, and that is a really bad security implementation rule. Files should be scanned. Yeah. So I also wrote a small note called, in reality this sounds easy, but it's fine if you just mention it in the report. This is of course something you should be aware of, that this slideshow is for a class in a school. So of course when you take this small lesson on my YouTube channel and you're not in my class, please be aware that don't skip this part and mention it in the report. However, if you're a small company and how should you scale security, maybe you need to mention it in a report because you don't have the time or resources, or it doesn't make sense to virus scan your files. That's also a thing about security. Is it sensible to do it? Then maybe you do it, else you don't. Don't just implement security stuff if it's not necessary. Create a risk assessment first, and after that you know what is necessary. Prevent overwriting existing files. This is another thing that you prevent when you give files an unpredictable name. So there are many different kind of. I think there are some classes you can download, on the internet. You can quickly just browse through the code and verify that it doesn't contain any unsafe functionality that could compromise your whole system. But you can also look at how to generate unique file names and never overwrite the ones you already have uploaded. Another thing that could help this issue is by placing files in folders that are different for each user. So just having all files in one big folder for every user in the system sounds like a bit headache to me, and that should never be done. Always try to separate stuff a bit so it's not just smashed together in a big chunk. If it's possible, consider saving the files in a database rather than on its file system. And this is like a plus and minus thing, because there's like the dark side and the light side, and the dark side has cookies, right? So I would say that in the idea of security, saving a file in a database definitely takes away a lot of the dangers of having a file in a file system, because you do not execute a file on a database. It is basically not really a file in a database. It is just some bytes or stream, whatever you call it, or blob elements. So that is different. However, having large files in a database could put a lot of strain on the database and the server itself. Even the actual bandwidth used to exchange all the data all the time. Let's say that you create a lot of requests to a server that saves the files in the database, and then say, oh, well, I want to fetch all the files because that is something you can do in the system. Okay. Then you might even do some DOS attack in reality. But I want you to just think about this step. Do you want to save your files in the database? You want to save it in the file systems? There's like pros and cons, and it's going to be a long talk, so I'm gonna stop it here and say, like, if you read the documents on the OWASP side and you even go even further, I guess, and try to get a community, you can do that on Stack Overflow, for example. And you get some opinions, maybe even talk to some security professionals or pen testers. It's not a bad idea to talk to pen testers, because they would know that this is a bad or a good idea because they've seen the results of it. Alright? So if files should be saved in the file system, consider using an isolated server with a different domain to serve the files uploaded. Yes, it is very common these days to use some sort of cloud service to basically take care of all the files for you. And well, yeah, sounds good, right? And I would say it sounds perfect, but there's some things you should be aware of. Do you trust other services? There's a design principle called trust cautiously, and that is about, this is your system and this is a cloud service that hosts your files. Does that cloud system have the same security implications, implementation, as your own system? Do they think about security the same way? Could this cloud service provider actually in some way compromise something for your application? Not directly, but maybe indirectly, and indirectly can lead to direct compromised features. If so, it's possible. And I cannot give you any better explanations. Just want you to think about this kind of way of choosing or not choosing cloud. All right. Path injection. Sure, because when you upload a file, you in theory have a file name. What if you do like dot dot slash, where you then save the file in 2 steps back, folder 2 steps back, or whatever? Could you place a file in a certain way that, or in a certain place that you do have access to, where you can execute it, for example? Really bad idea. Think about this a lot. Path injection is a really bad idea. Whitelist verification or whitelist verifying. Yes. You could do something where you look at the actual file name. If you could say that you could inform the users that the only files that is like JPEG files and PNG files is allowed. So you should definitely try and filter anything else out, and maybe even the name of the file, it maybe only is like 20 letters long, no spaces, blah blah blah, and then you can check for that, on reception of the file. All right, so some code snippets for you to look at the file. So this is from the earlier slide. This get path saved in a path file path variable type here, and then you can just print out to the screen the different kind of headers and whatever information you can find in the file, just like content disposition type, the content type, size, the name, and the submitted file name. So that is a way for you to get different kind of information you can look at already. However, it is not enough. You do need to look at the actual file whenever you save it on your hard drive by either scanning it or resizing it, and then re-scrambling the bits and the bytes in a way to preserve the file's integrity. And basically means that if it's an image, it should be the same image, but you are allowed to resize it, and whatever you're gonna do with it, it's up to you. Thoughts for you guys is check the content type header, whitelisted, check extension, whitelisted, check file header, create a new file name, check file size, store the file outside the document root, change permission, uploaded file will be owned by the web server, and only read-write permissions. So there are some links here you can go to, and I suggest you look at them. And I know you cannot click the links, but I'm gonna try and put them in the description below, so you can actually just click it instead of typing all of this manually. So I hope you liked this video, and even though it didn't contain a lot of code for you just to copy paste, which I'm kinda against, I hope you got some understanding of how to work with file upload and getting the right mindset on the task before actually doing any programming. And that is actually a far more valued asset to have as an asset that's in your brain, which is knowledge, is to know how to approach to deal with security more than just I know how to copy paste and get things to work. There's plenty of fish in the ocean that knows how to get things to work, but only a small handful of them actually understand the idea of building in security from the start. Please please like, subscribe my video. Please subscribe to my channel if you wish to. I hope you will. And if you have any questions, please just leave your comment below and I will get back to you. Okay? Bye.